All right, so I'll open a few things up in this project. It's still the Hogwarts project. We've still got this main website where we are listing all of the students and the houses that they belong to, and we have this system where we can click on a student and it shows their house. I want to add a few more tables to this project and a few more models to demonstrate a many-to-many association. And the many-to-many association that I'm going to be demoing is very similar to the one that's in the Rails guide. So if you need another look at how I'm implementing this, you can go to the Active Record Associations guide. And there has many through section. The example that they give is a physician's table with a physician model, a patient's table with a patient model, and they have patients and physicians related to each other in a many-to-many manner by way of a join table. And in this case, the join table is called appointments. And there's an appointment model associated with that. And an appointment is going to have the two foreign keys in it. So that's what makes it that join table. It has the two foreign keys, one pointing to which physician is belonging to that appointment, one pointing to which patient belongs to that appointment, and then an appointment date. So I'm going to build a similar system, but we have students in our system. I'm going to add teachers to the system, and I'm going to set up appointments between teachers and students. So like say during office hours, you want to have a student see a teacher, there'll be an appointments table for that. So it's going to be a similar style, but you'll actually get to see it fully implemented, not just as a diagram. So that means I need the new models. I need a teacher model and appointment model, so I can go ahead and create those now from the command line. So I can do a Rails G for generate model teacher. And to keep things simple, I'm going to, like with students, I just gave them a name and a house. I guess I can give the teacher the same, a name and a house. So I will give the teacher a name, which is a string, and reference is a house. So house : references. And that's all I should need to keep teachers simple. And then I'll want to migrate that new migration file, Rails DB migrate. Whoa. Oh, and that is my bad. I created teachers with the other set of the class, like the other section. So I have a database file right now that has the teachers table in it and an appointments table in it, but thankfully I have a seed script, right? So I can just delete the database and the schema file and remigrate the whole thing. So how I would go about doing that, I mean, there's many different ways of handling this situation. One of the ways I could handle this situation is I could switch over to the branch that I've been working with the other section, and I could use the migration tool to step backwards in time through the migrations, because that's another thing you can do with migrations. So I could step backwards in time to a point in time before the teacher migration even existed. And that way, like if I was really concerned about the data in my database, then I could leave the data alone. Like I'd lose the teacher's data, but I could sort of step back and keep the house data and the student data in there. But I don't really care about the data because I have a seed script that I can use to regenerate it all. So I can just go to this DB folder. I can delete the schema.rb. I can delete the development SQLite 3, and then I can run Rails DB migrate. It'll rerun all of my migrations for me. And then there's the teacher one as part of it. And then the seed script I could run next. But I won't run it yet because I'm going to change that seed script. I need to generate teachers as well. So maybe that's the next step. Before I get into appointments, I'll modify the seed script such that some teachers can be created. So I created a random number of students per house. I will just create a single teacher per house. And so this is student stuff. This is teacher stuff. So I will say teacher.create name, and I will use Faker for the names. Maybe I'll make sure that these names are unique. So I realize that in real life names aren't unique, but let's try to make them unique for the context of this application. And then the house can be the house. I could also do creating the teacher by way of the house if I set up the associations as well. But I just wanted to show two ways about doing this. So when I created students, I went to the house in question and I went to the students collection of the house to create a student. I can also just create a student or a teacher and pass in the house that I want them to be associated with. So two different ways of doing the same thing. I also need to make sure that the association holds within the models. So not only does a house have many students, a house has many teachers, and I'll also make them dependent on the house. So if the house is removed from the database, the dependent students and teachers will be deleted. So it's the same kind of relationship as we had for students. And then for teachers, it already has belongs to house, and that's because when I generated at the command line, I mentioned that it referenced a house, so it put that in there for me, it being the Rails command. All that's left here is probably to put one more little output line in the bottom of my script just to tell me like how many teachers were generated after running this script. And the number should be 8, right? Because I'm generating 8 houses and 1 teacher per house. So let's try running this script and see if we get a bunch of uniquely named teachers associated to all 8 of the houses. Rails DB seed will do that. So this runs for 8 different houses, telling me how many students were added each house. Looks like I have 8 teachers. I can always jump to my Rails console and teacher.first, Dr. Tanner, I don't know how to say the J in there, so I won't try to say it. Teacher.first.house.name, Thunderbird. So the association is set up correctly, and each house should have a teacher associated with it as well. So I've got that new model in the system, and now I want that many-to-many association between these new teachers and the students that were already in the system. And so for that, I need that appointments model, which needs to be created at the command prompt. And so for that, I need to Rails generate a model. Appointment is the name of the model. Appointment references a teacher, and it references a student. So I say appointment, teacher references, student references, but there's a little bit more to appointment. There's a time at which this appointment is going to occur, a date time, right? So it's like a meeting time. A meeting time, And we could put even more information there, like where they're meeting, what they're talking about. I mean, any kind of metadata that you want for the appointment could go in that join table. But we'll keep things simple, and I'll just put a meeting time, and I'll make it a date time, all one word. So Rails G model appointment, teacher references, student references, meeting time, date time. I get my model, I get a migration, I can run that migration. And now I need to set up the associations. And this is, things get a little bit trickier here, but it's not the end of the world. And so if I go and I open up, I've got the teacher model already open. I'll open up the student model and the appointment model. Appointment is where the foreign keys exist, and so Rails has already put the belongs to there. So an appointment belongs to two different things because it has two different foreign keys. An appointment belongs to a teacher and it belongs to a student. A student, on the other hand, has many appointments, but also has many teachers through appointments. So it has many appointments because of the fact that the appointment table can have the same reference or the same foreign key to the same student in multiple rows. So student with primary key 12 can be mentioned in however many different rows as you want of the appointment table. So by default, or by the fact that we have a foreign key over here pointing back to the students table, we have many appointments. But the whole point of this many-to-many was to also be able to associate students to teachers, and this will be any teacher the student has ever had an appointment with. And that's, if we look at the Rails guide, that's sort of traveling through the whole association. So if you think of this as being the student, we'd be able to look into the table, see all the appointments that have that student's ID, and then we'd be able to see all of the teachers that that student had appointments with. So that's the has many through aspect of that association. And that works in the reverse direction as well. So a teacher also has many appointments, again by nature of the fact of having the foreign key in the appointments table, but it also has many students through appointments. While I'm in here, maybe it's time to put in just a few simple validations, right? Validates that the name has a presence of true. So when we create teachers, we can't leave them with blank names. That seems like a decent validation to have for a teacher. It mirrors the validation that we have for the student. For an appointment, it would also make sense. The foreign keys will be required because they're foreign keys. The database is going to require them. But it would make sense to not want to generate appointments that don't have meeting dates. So I could also say it validates that meeting time, I think I called it, has a presence of true. So a few simple presence validations just to make sure that I don't get bad data in my database. And now I can go to my seed script and hopefully go and create some new seeding code to set up a bunch of appointments between teachers and students. The association is complicated enough that I could have made a mistake somewhere along the way. And so one of the things I like to do at this point is to hop to a Rails console and play around with those associations to see if they work the way that I expect them to. And then once I'm comfortable working with the associations, then I can go into the seed script and solidify that into code. So I'll go to the console and I will reload it. I don't know if this reload's necessary anymore. I'm just used to always doing that. And now I should be able to create new appointments. So if I say appointment.new, there is a new appointment. To forge an appointment, I need a student, a teacher, and a time, a date time. So I'll create a student variable and I'll just pull off the first student in the database. I need a teacher. I will pull off the last teacher in the database. So we're making an appointment between Trinity Hain and Colin Lehner, and it has to happen at a particular time. So when is this going to happen? Well, we need a date time, so I can go to, do I have a date time done here? When is a keyword. Okay, so I do, so I can just call it DT. This is going to create a date time for me. I always forget the correct parameters to use with new for date time, but date time also has this handy parse method, which is like a factory method that creates new date time objects, and you can give it a string of a human readable date time and it'll parse that into an actual date time. So I could say something like if we wanted to have this meeting on the 18th of October, so 2 weeks from now, I could say 18 October 2018 at 10:15 a.m. Will that work? It worked. It's now a date time. Parse understands all different kinds of human writable dates. So this is not the exact format you have to use, but you just have to get something that looks like an appropriate date and time, and it'll parse it out for you. The date class also has a parse, and you can just pass it human written date, and it'll parse that down properly, and same for the time class. It's very, very handy, I find, to use parse. And so now I should be able to, with all three of those pieces, with my student and my teacher and my date time, I should be able to create an appointment. So I should be able to say appointment.create, where the student is that S variable and the teacher is that T variable and the meeting time is the DT variable. And it's worked. I now have an appointment where the teacher ID is 8. That looks correct. The student ID is 1. That looks correct. The meeting time is the correct time. That's all good as well. And I guess I can now pull that appointment and we can see if all of the sides of the relationship actually work. So for any given appointment, I should be able to see which teacher that appointment belongs to. That works. It's Colin. For any given appointment, I should see which student that appointment belongs to, because an appointment belongs to both a teacher and a student. And there's Trinity. I should also be able to go to any student like Trinity who has a appointment and look at the collection of appointments that are available, or even how many of them there are. I should be able to go to Trinity's first appointment and see who the teacher's name is. It's Colin. And the opposite should be true as well. I should be able to go to a teacher and see their collection of appointments. There they are. And I should be able to go to the first of those appointments and see the student's name that they're working with. in that appointment, and then it's Trinity. And now that I've played around with that association from all the different angles, I can feel confident that I set it up correctly, that I did all the right things in the models, and I'm now confident enough with working with it that I can go into the seed script and actually code that out. Let's do just that. Back to the seed script here. It looks like I've got some things that I haven't saved in Git for a while. Working on the many-to-many between teachers and students. And then in the seed script, destroying the house will destroy not just the associated students, but also the associated teachers. So delete all houses and their associated students and teachers. But I should also delete all appointments first. And I want to do that first because the foreign keys. There's foreign keys in the appointments table that refer to the students and the teachers. If I deleted the students and the teachers first, those foreign keys wouldn't be pointing to anything anymore. The database would probably complain to me. So there's a proper order to how I want to delete these things. I'll delete the appointments first. That destroys the appointments and the foreign key relationships, and then I'm free to remove the students and the teachers by way of the house. I'll set up a few appointments. I'll set up 10 different appointments. So I'll say 10 times due. Remember, with the seed script, we're just trying to set up some semi-realistic data to work with in our application. So in my semi-realistic world, there are 10 appointments that are going to be created every time we run the seed script. For each appointment, like we saw with working in the console, I need a student, a teacher, and a date and time. So my student variable, I can go to the student collection, to all of the students, and I can just ask it to sample from that collection, and it'll give me a random student from the collection. Or I could say sample 5, and it would give me 5 random students. Sample's awesome. Especially because sample is especially awesome because randomization is not, like pulling random elements from a table in SQL is not ANSI SQL. So meaning it's not the same across all the different vendors. If you want to do a random row from a table in MySQL and in SQL Server and in Oracle, there's different code to do it in all of them because it's not ANSI SQL. But when you have a abstraction layer between you and the database that's database agnostic, well, it will write the correct SQL for you regardless of what you're using as your backend. Again, so I could have this Rails application running on Postgres, and I could then change it over to Oracle, and I wouldn't have to change anything other than the config file, not any of the code. So again, it's another one of the reasons why I really like having an ORM between me and the database. So here is teacher. Sample from the existing teachers. There's only 8 of them, but that's fine. I should be able to use Faker to give me a fake date sometime in the future, which is, again, like without Faker generating fake dates in the future, it's possible, but there's so many weird edge cases around dates that I would prefer not to have to think about any of that. And so let's just quickly look at what the Faker gem has to offer in terms of date generation. It'll have something for sure because it's such a common thing that you want to fake out. Faker time. So with Faker time, you can go forward or backwards in time and have it generate for you a date that many days, either in the future or the past, in the morning or the evening. So Faker time forward. Okay, so let's do date equals Faker time forward I'm going to pick a random number. Days in the future, which is just going to be faker number. Well, I can probably just use the old Ruby rand method. Will that give me whole numbers? No, it won't. Never mind. Faker number dot number 2. So pick a random 2-digit number, go that many days in the future, and put them all in the morning. This doesn't make sense to line it up anymore now that that long variable's there. And then for each one of these now I can go and create the appointment saying that the student is the student variable, the teacher is the teacher variable, and the meeting time is that date that I just picked out. And because I'm about to scroll off the side of the screen here, I will just line these up one after the other like that. And then just like I did when I added teachers, it would probably be good to know if all 10 appointments really generated. So I can say appointment.count. Appointments. So after having created all the students and all the teachers, maybe let's generate 2 teachers just to give us a bit of a larger sample size for the teachers. So we have 2 teachers created for each house, and then 10 appointments where the student and the teacher are picked at random. The day in the future is random as well. The appointment is created with the student, the teacher, and the date. And so I should be able to run my Rails DB seed. It's generating the students, and boom, something blew up in my face. Type error, expected numeric. That's because I didn't cast this to an integer. Faker generates everything as strings because it's expecting you to use them in some kind of string context. So I have to cast the string in which it put the number into an integer. So forward is what blew up there. Or at least that's what I'm guessing blew up. And then it looks like 10 appointments were created. And if I go to appointment.size in my console, .count, there's 10 of them there. If I look at the first one, it's teacher ID 37. So if I find that teacher, it's Kathy. See how many appointments Kathy has. Kathy has 2 appointments. Who are they with? They are with student ID 1036 and 1243, but I should also just be able to do .students on the teacher to see that this teacher has an appointment with Vanessa Yast and Arnold Christensen. And so that's all worked. So if we were to recap what had to happen there is that I created a whole new model and associated table for teachers and a validation for that. A whole new model for appointments with a foreign key to a teacher, a foreign key to a student, and a validation. And then on either sides of that many-to-many, I set up my has many appointments and then the through to get to the teachers from the student. A teacher has many appointments and a has many through that allows me to get to students through appointments. And then a seed script which generated 10 of those appointments. All by way, everything I've done so far is by way of Faker. And so when you're doing your project, remember that you can use Faker as your one and only data source. There's so much things that that Faker can fake out that you could have more than enough data just using it alone to generate data by way of your seed script. But you could also branch out and pull data from any kind of open data set that you find, CSVs, JSON, you name it. Before I end the video, did anyone have any questions or comments about anything that I did to set up this many-to-many or this associated seed script? Awesome. So I will do this.